Thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction. Is it okay, the volume? Is it consistent? It's fine, huh? Okay. If not, please tell me. Yes, as was mentioned, right, this is the second in this series called Origins, in which I attempt to trace the origins of some of the most iconic images in the history of art, okay, and then also follow through with its development, right up to contemporary times. Yes, I mean, as was mentioned also, I teach at LaSalle I've been teaching there for the last 17 years, right? And it was only recently, about 3 years back, that I actually developed, a master's program focusing on modern contemporary Asian art history. I normally have brochures that I distribute, but today, I sort of didn't have time to print them. Okay, but if you are interested in doing a master's course that focuses on modern contemporary Asian art, right? Yeah, you can always drop me, an email. Although the deadline has closed, right? It closed just this week, right? But if you're interested in enrolling for the January 2014 intake, right, just talk to me. Or else you can always consider, the January 2015 intake, right? We have an intake every January, right? Enough of the marketing. Okay, right, today we're going to focus on the image of Christ, right, or the Christ image. Okay, and I think, the image of Christ is probably, the most, one of the most, if not the most iconic image, I think, in the history of Western art, right? Now, somehow, we don't have a physical description of the appearance of Jesus, right, in the Bible, okay? Nor do we have any sort of portraits, right, made of Jesus, all right, because of the Jewish injunction against the making of images. Okay, I believe the first commandment, warned against the making of graven images or idols. Right, so, but, when you look at an image of Christ, somehow you know that that is Jesus, right, somehow. Okay, somehow it has become ingrained in our consciousness, right? And, the image of Christ has really been, if you think about it, right, it was an image that was established by artists themselves, right? This image that, we have become familiar with. And artists throughout the centuries, have, always grappled with this, I suppose, this visual problem, right? How do you depict the invisible? How do you depict the divine? Right? And as you know, Jesus is both man and God. Okay, and that actually poses more problem, a greater challenge, because how do you depict his divine as well as his human nature? Right? But as the talk goes on, you'll see that artists have come up with very inventive ways, okay, of representing Jesus. Now, in fact, it's important to note, okay, that although I use this generic term Christianity, okay, Christianity itself is divided into 3 major branches. I think it's very important to note that. Okay, originally, of course, there was just what you call Christianity, right, or Catholicism. Okay, and then later on, because of doctrinal and other differences, okay, it's branched out, okay, into other sort of Christian denominations. Okay, so you have the Roman Catholicism. Okay, Roman Catholicism, the image or images of Mary, okay, are equally as important as those of Jesus, right? Okay, Mary, has been, in a sense, enthroned as a queen of heaven. Okay, and in terms of status, really, Catholics sometimes see her as, being, in a sense of, of an equal status with Jesus, right? So, images of Mary, in fact, proliferate, for example, in the Renaissance, okay, particularly in what you call Catholic countries like Italy, right, and other such countries, and of course the Eastern Orthodox, Right? Now, the Eastern Orthodox, in fact, originated, I would say, during the Byzantine Empire. Right? Now, it's called Eastern because it really was birthed in the East, right? In Byzantine itself. Okay? Right? And it has become popular in Eastern countries like Eastern Europe and especially the Middle East, like Egypt. Right? So you have also the Eastern Orthodox Church. And the Eastern Orthodox Church, in fact, differ from Roman Catholicism and also Protestantism in its beliefs. Okay, for example, it doesn't believe in Immaculate Conception, right? And it believes that the Holy Spirit, actually, comes, from the Father and not the Son, right? So there are these fundamental doctrinal differences. Okay, and Eastern Orthodox Church is also very liturgical in its practice. Right? And it relies a lot on the veneration of icons. Okay. And finally, we have Protestantism. Right? And the turning point was this year called 1517. Okay, this year, 1517, when Martin Luther King, not Martin Luther King, sorry. That's Martin Luther King Jr., but this is Martin Luther, right? The German, theologian, right? Who nailed the 95 Theses, right, on the doors of a German cathedral, right, where he actually protested against some of the practices of the Catholic Church, right. In particular, what they call the seal of indulgences. That means you can buy your way out of purgatory, right? Okay, I mean, for example, through donation to the church, okay, you can get your time in purgatory cut short, right? And Martin Luther and some of the other Protestant reformers also protested against the practice called transubstantiation, okay, where it's believed that as you partake the bread during the Eucharist, you're actually partaking the actual body of Jesus. Okay, so these are very fundamental doctrinal differences, okay, that led to the split of the church. And in Protestantism, what happened was that after Protestantism was established in certain countries, like in particular in Holland, right, in Germany, in Switzerland, and in Protestantism there was a kind of prohibition against religious imagery. Okay, so afterwards, as I'll mention, in fact, there was a destruction, right, of religious imagery, particularly in Protestant countries. Okay, so art in Protestant countries, right, in particular after the Renaissance, particularly during the Baroque, developed in very different ways from Catholic countries, right, where artists began to paint still life, landscape, okay, rather than religious images because of the Protestant stance against religious imagery. Okay, so I think it's important to know this, right? Now, as I said, we don't have a description of Jesus's physical appearance, but in the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, okay, it makes a reference to the vision that John had. John was the author, or is the author of the book of Revelation, right? Okay, but here, we have a description of Jesus when he had already ascended to heaven, okay? And this was a vision that John had, okay, of someone, who's likely to be Jesus, the Son of Man, right? And but this is nowhere, right? Close to what we call a human appearance, right? Okay, this is more like a divine appearance, right, of Jesus, right? I suppose this is the only perhaps description that we have, right, in the Bible about Jesus. Right, his face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. Okay? That doesn't help us to sort of visualize him as a man or his physical appearance. Now, is there a true likeness of Christ? Right? Is there a true likeness of Christ? Well, I want to draw your attention to two sort of, I would call them relics. Okay, first I'll talk about the one on the right, okay, which is called the the Saint Veronica with the Sudarium. Right now, the legend surrounding this particular Sudarium is actually a kerchief, a handkerchief, right? And the legend surrounding this, the story of Veronica, right, with the kerchief, in fact, emerged in the medieval period, in about the 11th century, right? It tells the story of this woman. I mean, it doesn't occur in the Bible, right? But I think it's mentioned in some, I believe, in the Book of Legend, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or one of the apocryphal, sources, okay, where during the Passion, when Jesus was carrying the cross, okay, Veronica, right, took out her kerchief, her handkerchief, right, and wiped the sweat off the face of Jesus, okay, and miraculously that face was imprinted, right, on the handkerchief, okay, and today it is a relic, and this relic, in fact, is now housed in St. Peter's in Rome. Okay. Now, of course, by the time this was discovered, artists have already established the image of Jesus, right, in art. Okay, but I suppose this particular image, right, on the handkerchief of Saint Veronica sought to kind of confirm, okay, what is thought to be the true likeness of Jesus. And of course, this very controversial on the left, right, relic, okay, called the Turin Shroud. Okay, have you ever heard of the Turin Shroud? Right. Now, in 1898, right, there was this photographer called Sikander Pier. He took, he was one of his tasks was to take a photograph of the shroud that was supposed to have been, the shroud that Jesus was, wrapped in. Okay, and as he took as he developed the photograph, he discovered that to his shock and disbelief, okay, a negative image of a face appeared, right, as he was developing the image. Okay, and in fact, this face seemed to be show kind of a bearded man, okay, with rather long hair, and there seemed to even have been, and it seemed to show a kind of a physical sort of wounds, okay, that are consistent with crucifixion, right, and and from that time onwards, this particular relic has been venerated, okay, as the true likeness of Christ. But it has been one of the most debated, I would say, religious relic. And scientists have made tests, carbon dating, and etc. Okay, but and some have exposed this as a 14th century fraud. Okay, but I have to say that there's no definitive answer, right, as to whether this is the true, right, image of Christ miraculously appearing on the shroud. Okay, and and there are books that support the view that it is, a miraculous image of Jesus, right? But this was already in the late 19th century, okay, and the face that appears here, in fact, seek to confirm, already the image that we have of Jesus as a bearded, a man with rather long hair, right? Okay, so this again, I brought this up, to again, just to show you, what perhaps is the true likeness of Christ. But again, there are many, sort of doubters about this, right? These two relics. Now, as I mentioned, even as late as about the 4th century, the early 4th century, okay, that there are sort of objections, right, to the depiction of images right? And especially images that are used in worship. Okay, so in the 4th century, there's still this kind of discomfort, right, about the use of images, right, in art and also in churches. Okay. I don't know why there's this, what do you call that, musical notes. Okay. Right. Okay, supposed to be bullet points. Okay, anyway, these are some of the, what do you call, canonical themes, some of the major themes, that we find, right, in the history of art, okay, regarding the life of Jesus. Okay, you have, of course, the Madonna and Child. We're going to look at examples of all this, right? The baptism of Christ, okay, where he was baptized by Saint John the Baptist. Okay, and in the Madonna and Child, all right, normally shows Madonna referring to Mary, okay, the Virgin Mary, and the Christ child, right? Also, there are, quite a number of works done, when Jesus was young, the nativity and also the adoration of Magi, right? These were also major themes in Western art. Okay, and of course you have the Last Supper, and then the crucifixion, okay, which is really part of the Passion, right? And then we also have what we call the descent from the cross, and also the lamentation and the Pieta or pity, okay, and then the entombment, right? Okay, so and then you have the ascension or the resurrection, okay, and then of course the judgment, the last judgment. Okay? So we're going to look at some examples, right, from all these themes today. Now, when the first images of Jesus, in fact, appeared, right? Or can be found in what you call the catacombs. Okay. Now, the catacombs are these, I would call them, subterranean tunnels or network, right? Or underground burial chambers. Okay, used to house, the bodies of the early Christians. Okay, and this can be found underneath the streets of Rome. Okay, and the catacombs were said to have housed at one point about 6 million bodies. Right? And in this catacombs, right, you'll find that Jesus was sometimes, or most of the time represented by symbols. Okay, although there are some figures that are said to represent Jesus, but in early Christian art, Jesus was represented by symbols. Okay, and these are some of the common symbols in early Christian art. Right, we have the Good Shepherd, the dove, vine, anchor, the Cairo, monogram, the fish, the Alpha and Omega, and the peacock. Now, this image that you see here, right, dating to 235 CE, okay, is thought to have been the oldest known image of Jesus, right? Okay, now we cannot say conclusively that it's the oldest, but it's thought to have been the oldest image of Jesus. Right? You see this, now I wonder if this figure here. Okay, I mean, it's not that clear, right? But you can see a figure that is dressed in, I don't know, a kind of a tunic or robe. Okay, with a kind of an aristocratic bearing, right? Okay, depicting a young man, right? That seemed to have been, to represent Jesus, because you have to look at the context. Okay, here, the story that's depicted in this particular painting, right, shows the healing of the paralytic man. Okay, and that's mentioned in the Bible. Okay, so obviously, we would think that the person who is doing the healing is Jesus himself. Okay, so this is a very early image of Christ. Now, many of the images, early images of Jesus, show him to be a very young man, okay, beardless, clean shaven, right? And but you know, our image of Jesus today, right, is one who is bearded, correct, with rather long hair, okay, rather stern looking, right? And in fact, one of the earliest bearded images of Jesus, right, to emerge date to the 4th century CE, okay, or AD, right? And you'll see the image here, and you'll see the two symbols, the Alpha and the Omega, right? The first and last letter of the Greek alphabet, okay? And again, this is, you know, in reference to the Bible, right? Where Jesus said, I'm the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And you already see the halo appearing, right? The halo is actually supposed to symbolize a circle of light, okay, around the head of a holy or sacred person. Now, we also see another bearded image of Jesus here, but here is interesting because, you know, we see Jesus being flanked by Saint Peter and Paul, right? This is also found in the catacomb, and it dates to the second half of the 4th century, right, CE. Okay, so, and this work in fact presents us with the first fully formed image of Christ in majesty that would later come to dominate Byzantine art. Okay, in a sense, the enthroned Christ, okay, Christ as the ruler of all. Okay, but you'll see that some of these images, you know, were derived from Roman imperial imagery. Okay, from for example, from sculptures of, for example, Roman emperors. Okay, either that or from classical pagan, right, imagery. Okay. And you can see that the figures are still very much classical figures, okay, all right, in terms of their dressing and also their pose. Now, this particular one contains, in fact, the earlier surviving Christian mosaic, okay, and what you see here is actually, you know, representing Helios, who is the sun god. Okay, the Roman sun god. Okay, but it also could represent Christ. Okay, so we see here a kind of syncretism happening. Okay, so we see the syncretic nature of early Christianity. Okay, where, you know, the image of Christ itself, okay, was actually derived from pagan imagery. Okay. I think the reason is quite clear. It's because, you know, Christian art does not have a kind of a tradition that it can draw on. Okay, and in any case, you know, many of the artists who made the early images, right, were still working in what they call the classical tradition, the Roman tradition, right? So, you know, it's only natural that they draw upon from classical sources. Now here you see an image of the Good Shepherd. Okay. But now we cannot say, you know, definitively that is Jesus, right? Okay, bearing a sheep on his shoulder. Okay, but I see it more as a symbol. Okay, a symbol of early Christianity. You know, and again, you know, it makes references back to the Bible, right, where Jesus said, "I am the Good Shepherd." Okay, and he also links back with the parable of the lost sheep, right, where, you know, Jesus said, you know, every sheep knows my name. You know, he cares for the sheep. Okay, and you know, he bears, right, our burden. Okay. But such imagery, in fact, occur in classical mythology, right? One of the Greek gods, Hermes, right, who is a messenger of the gods, in fact, he bears a ram, right, as he went to save a city, a particular city, right, from plague, right? And you also have Mercury, okay, one of the other Greek gods, you know, tending to his sheep. Okay, so such imagery may have its origins from those, you know, from classical mythology itself. Okay. But in the Bible, it's also, you know, the sheep sort of, you know, allegory, right, is quite closely linked, right, to the Bible as well. Oh, here you have it. Right, so this is what you call the Kriophoros, right, the ram bearer. Okay, that is thought to represent, the Greek god Hermes, right, who bears a ram, okay, on his shoulder, okay, as he saved a city, right, from plague. Okay, but the Good Shepherd imagery may also have been inspired by the Shepherd of Hermas, which is a Christian literary work, right, dating to the 1st or 2nd century CE. Okay. Okay. Now talking about the catacombs. Okay, this is what this is a catacomb where you have what you call the loculi or shelf tombs. Right. So what will happen is that the bodies will be placed inside, right, the shelves, and then slammed shut with a slab. Okay. Now, and in the catacombs, you'll find some of the earliest symbols, okay, that were actually used in Christianity before the emergence of the cross. Okay, and some of the most common symbols include the fish and the anchor. Right, now this is also, I would say, one of the earliest evidence of graffiti. It's actually sgraffito, right? It's scratched on the wall. Okay. Now, why did early Christians use symbols in their, in their art? Anyone have any idea? Why were these symbols used instead of, for example, human figures? Sorry, someone said something.
They were persecuted. They had to hide.
Yes, that's right. Thanks, Stephanie. Right. Yes. I mean, these symbols actually serve as a kind of, to put it simply, a kind of secret language, right, amongst the early Christians. Okay, because they were persecuted by the Romans. Okay, and in a sense, the catacombs also serve as a kind of a respite or a hiding place, okay, for the early Christians from the Romans, although their primary purpose was as a burial site. Okay, so you have the fish. Okay, the fish has quite a complex, I would say, symbolism. Okay, because fish, right, is the first 5 letters of the phrase Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior, right, make up the Greek word for fish. Okay, so that's why the fish came on to take, this particular symbolism. Right? So I suppose you can see the fish as an early form of the cross. Okay, and the anchor, right? As you know, the anchor, is very important to sailors, especially during in stormy seas, right? Right, it stands for security, for hope, and likewise in Christian symbolism or imagery, right? The anchor here stands for hope in salvation, okay, through Jesus Christ. Right? Okay, so really the anchor came to be regarded as a symbol of hope and safety. Okay, so you see the fish and the anchor as well over there. Now, much of the art in the catacomb, okay, can be found, in what you call the cubicular. Now, the cubicular is like a small chapel, right? Okay, and where people could hold memorial services, etc. And we find early evidence of fresco painting, right, in this particular space, right, the cubicular. And here, this is an interesting painting. Okay, what you find here is that if you look at the layout of this particular painting, is laid out in the form of what you call a cruciform. Can you see a cruciform, right? And here we already see the appearance of the cross. Okay, so the cross, in fact, started to emerge, I would say, around the 4th century CE. Okay, and now in the center, you'll find the image of Christ as the Good Shepherd. Okay, right. But in the lunettes here, right, in the lunettes, you'll find the story told of Jonah, right, Jonah and the whale. Okay, and you also see these figures, right, who are holding up their hands in prayer or reverence, right? These are what you call the orans, right? Figure in an attitude of prayer. Okay. Now the figures are still quite classical, right? But it has been observed that they are quite clumsily drawn. In fact, if you look closely, yes, they are quite awkwardly or clumsily drawn. Okay, but nonetheless, right, they serve as some of the earliest, Christian imagery. All right, we are still in the catacombs. Okay, now this is an interesting one. Okay, now I want to draw your attention to the left, right, the figure on the left. Okay, some of you will recognize this image. Anyone wants to fathom a guess as to, who that person holding a club is? Obviously not Jesus. I don't remember Jesus holding a club. Okay, that's right. Okay, Hercules, right? Actually, he's, this was during his 11th labor. He has altogether how many? 14 or 12 labors around there, right? Okay, this is his 11th labor, okay, where he was tasked to find some golden apples, right, in a certain garden. Okay, right? And, in the end, he had to face this 100-headed creature. It's actually not a Medusa, some sort of Medusa. It's actually what you call a Ladon, Ladon, right? It's a 100-headed creature. Okay. Now, what is this pagan image, right, doing in a Christian context? I mean, the catacombs are obviously, a kind of a Christian sort of, space, a setting, right? What is it doing there? Okay, again, you can see, how, I suppose, the early Christians draw analogy from such classical mythology. Okay, and we can see Hercules, perhaps, as Christ himself, overcoming evil, right? Overcoming the devil. Okay, this, we can read it, I suppose, this way. Now, you also see, very interestingly, the peacock appearing. Okay, now, peacock, in early Christian art, it's quite a common motif, right? And, peacock has come to symbolize what you call immortality, okay, or resurrection. Okay, because it's believed that the peacock's feathers, right, cannot rot. Okay, so the peacock has come to symbolize, right, immortality or resurrection. So this is what they call a cubicula, right, this small chapel space, right, that you find in the catacombs. Now this is a detail taken from sarcophagus. Sarcophagus is like a stone coffin, okay, and it was a practice at that time, to have relief sculptures on this sarcophagus. Perhaps to ensure that the deceased will have a good afterlife. Okay, so we see a couple of other symbols here, right? Another very important early symbol is what they call the Chi-Rho monogram. Okay, the first two letters, right, of the Greek word for Christ. Okay, the Chi, the X, and the Rho, the P, right? Okay, joined together as a monogram. Right? And the Chi-Rho monogram, as you can see, is sort of encircled within, a laurel wreath, encircles the Chi-Rho monogram. And the laurel wreath itself stands for or symbolizes victory over sin. Okay, victory over sin, or victory over death. Okay. And I'm not sure whether these are doves, right? I mean, they're obviously birds, right? But the dove, has of course come to symbolize the Holy Spirit, okay, in Christian art. And you'll see the two Roman soldiers there, and then you see what appears to be like a cross. Okay, but I'm not sure, that it is actually a cross. It's part of the Chi-Rho monogram. Okay, but you have here, a semblance of a cross here as well. Okay, in this particular image. Another sort of example of the Good Shepherd. Okay, this particular one made of marble. Okay, again you see the figure, he's very much in a classical pose. Okay, and you see that, he's being shown as a young man, right, bearing a sheep on his back. And this very interesting sarcophagus of Junius Bassus. okay, a very famous sarcophagus, right, of a very high official. Now, Junius Bessus served, of course, in the Roman Empire, and his rank was like that of a senator, so he was quite a high official. And the inscription on sarcophagus tells us that, he was a late convert. In fact, he converted to Christianity just before his death. Okay? And this particular sculpture, right, relief sculpture, can be found on, the sarcophagus itself. Okay, and he has what we call little scenes of vignettes, right? Showing us scenes from both the Old and New Testament. Now, in this particular, sarcophagus, Jesus appears 4 times. Okay, I won't have time to go through every single scene. Okay, but I think you can see which is Adam and Eve, right? Okay, can you see Adam and Eve on the lower, register, right? Okay, now on the upper register we see trees, Jesus appearing 3 times. Okay, at the very center you see him being flanked again by Peter and Paul. Okay, and then next to it, you see him appearing before Pontius Pilate, right? And then the last one, in the first register, the first row, the upper row, right, also shows him before Pontius Pilate. And you can see that Pontius Pilate is in the midst of trying to wash his hands, where he says, I wash my hands clean, his blood will be on the Jewish people, not on me. Okay. And you see him occurring another time, right, right at the bottom register, right, where he makes the triumphal entry into Jerusalem on a donkey, right? But here you can see that, quite clearly that the figures are drawn from classical sculpture, right? At least in the pose of the figure, the clothes they wear, right? And even, pagan imagery, in fact, is also incorporated into these scenes, right? If you look at the central image of Jesus, right below him, there's another figure there, right? And that figure is actually the primal sun, Roman, sun god, okay? The Roman sun god. And he's actually carrying a billowing cloud, okay? Just beneath the feet of Jesus. And, in here as well, in the triumphal entry, in fact, the entry itself, okay, the imagery itself follows closely, right, the kind of triumphal entry of emperors, right, that you see, for example, on those triumphal arches, okay? And just on top of it, you'll see a Roman imperial eagle, okay, right, suggesting that whoever did this, wants to draw an analogy of Jesus as an army commander, right, of a Roman army commander, right, okay, making his triumphal entry. So here you see, and the figure of Jesus himself, okay, again being shown, young, clean-shaven, okay, and we can very well mistake him for one of the, the Greek or Roman gods, okay, probably someone like Apollo, for example. Now, of course, later on, when you make images, okay, you normally have to justify it, right? And the Catholic Church, in fact, came out with some justification, right, of these images. Okay, firstly, as lessons in the Christian faith for the illiterate. Okay, so these images are meant to be didactic. Okay, they are meant to, to educate, right, the illiterate. Okay, and also as visual reminders of the mysteries of the Incarnation and examples of the saints. And lastly, as a stimulus to devotion. Okay, so these are some of the motivation, okay, as to why images of Jesus and the saints and Mary, develop. Okay, I think we've seen one early example of Christ in majesty, okay, which is the Western Christian image of Christ seated on the throne, right, as ruler of the world. Okay, and he's always shown what you call frontally, okay, and often flanked by other sacred figures. Right? Okay. And, similar to Christ in majesty is what they call the Christ Pantocrator. Okay, now the Christ Pantocrator refers to a specific depiction of Christ. And Pantocrator can be translated as, ruler of all, or, judge of humanity, all-powerful, right? So it depicts Christ as, as ruler and judge, as the all-powerful sovereign God, okay, that he is, right? And it shows a very authoritative, Christ with beard and, long hair, right, and with a halo, okay. And this is, one of the oldest known icon of Christ Pantocrator. And this image became very famous during the Byzantine Empire, right? Okay, it became very famous, and in fact, it's one of the most, recurring, right, images in Christian art. Now, do you notice the face of Christ? What do you notice about the face of this particular image? Can you see that the two sides are different? Okay, now this is something very interesting. Now, we wonder why, the artist, can you see the left and the right side, right, of the face are different? Okay, now what's the purpose for this? Now, this is very unusual, in fact. Okay, perhaps, it's speculated that the artist here wants to stress the dual nature of Jesus, okay, as both God and man, right? I think it's a very interesting solution to this problem, As I said, the challenge is how to depict him as both man and God at the same time, right? So perhaps this artist has found a solution by, dividing the face up, okay? And, some of this, the bearded image of Christ itself, right, or Christ Pantocrator, okay, could have also derived or borrowed from, pagan imagery, okay? In particular, images of the Roman or the Greek god Zeus, right, the chief of the gods, okay? And this particular Roman seated Zeus was, I believe, made during the Roman period, okay, following the type established by Phidias or Phidias. And Phidias was a very popular, very famous sculptor, right, during the Greek period. Okay, of course, one of the original seven wonders of the world was the colossal statue of Zeus, right? Okay, there's now now gone, and but you'll see Zeus, always as shown to be bearded and with long hair, and perhaps this the image of Christ, right, Pantocrator, could have derived from this particular image of Zeus. Okay, this is another example. Okay, also done in Byzantine style, and such images of Christ Pantocrator are normally found in certain parts of the church. Okay, normally in the apse, right? In the apse, you have a half dome, right? Or on the highest part of the dome, okay, you'll find this image. Okay, and it's normally shown half length, okay, half of or three-quarter length, right? And this particular one is interesting because it has a cruciform. You'll see the cruciform there, right? Only reserved for the image of Jesus, right? And his right hand seems to be making some gesture, okay, maybe a gesture of blessing, and his left hand holds the scripture. Okay, and interestingly, you'll see the Christogram, ICXC, okay, which stands for Jesus Christ. Okay, the IC in fact represents the Greek characters, okay, right, the first and last letters of Jesus. Okay, and the XC represent the chi and sigma and the first and last letters of Christ, right? So they both stand for, right, the name Jesus Christ. Now here we see, this, a very interesting image. Okay, in fact, it's there's a typo there, right? Illustration of the Last Supper. Okay, dating to the Byzantine period, 6th century. One of the earliest, if not the earliest, depiction of the Last Supper. Okay, now, in fact, when I first counted the number of people, there are only like 11. Okay, there could be 12, right? Okay, there should be 12, of the apostles there, right? And we know, that Jesus is set apart from them, right? He's the one on the left, okay, with the halo, right, around his head, okay? And the other disciples or apostles don't have halos, right, around their head. Okay, at least not in this particular picture. Okay. Now, and normally in Last Supper, images, okay, we will have there's a certain convention of depicting it, right? For example, how did this artist, depict Judas? As you know, Judas was the one who betrayed Jesus to the Romans, right? Okay, and how do you depict him normally, in Last Supper paintings? Now, in this particular one, can you see this figure, okay, with the arrow pointing, right? That figure stretching out his hand. Okay, what is he taking from? I don't know, looks like a bowl to me, right? What is he taking? He's actually stealing money. Okay, again, you have to make references back to the Bible, okay, where, Judas was said to have stolen from the money bag. Okay, so immediately, we know who Judas is, right, in this particular image. And in later Last Supper paintings, right, different artists have different ways of representing Judas, all right? We have some examples later on. Now, again, the system of symbols and images, right, were codified by cultural convention and iconographic tradition. Right, so, for example, in the Byzantine period, you'll always see Christ with a halo, a cruciform halo, right? He's also shown bearded, for example, right? Okay, so all this is established by cultural convention and tradition, okay, as well as the ways in which Mary and the saints were represented as well, okay? And all this have been established by the work of artists, okay? I mean, certainly one can say that some of these images will really stem from the kind of powerful imagination of artists, right? Because we don't have, for example, we don't have description, right, in the Bible or other sources, right? So artists, I suppose, have to, right, use their imagination. And some of these images have become enshrined, right, in the convention and tradition, right, of Western art. Now this is, we are going now to the medieval period, okay, about the 12th century. Okay, so this is what they call the Romanesque period, right? And this particular relief sculpture, right, is found in a church, right, the Cathedral of Saint Lazare, right? And at that time, right, during the medieval period, in the Romanesque, right, in particular, especially in the Romanesque period, sculptures are only found at certain parts of the church. For example, in the church portal, right? It's before you actually enter the church, right? You'll be confronted with these sculptures. And one of the favorite themes of such images during the Romanesque period is the theme of the Last Judgment, right? I mean, there's a reason why you want to include the theme of the Last Judgment, right, at the entrance of the church, okay, so that, it would maybe stir people to repent from their sins, right, before they even enter the church, okay. Now, this is one of the most interesting Last Judgment, sculpture, okay, done by a man called Gislibertus. Now, he's one of the few artists, medieval artists, that we actually know by name. Okay, and here Gislibertus shows, his own vision of the Last Judgment. Now, I have to add that the Last Judgment is not mentioned specifically in the Bible. Okay, it's mentioned, in the book of Revelations. Okay, but as I said, it's really up to the artist's, powers of imagination. Okay, to sort of visualize, okay, what the Last Judgment will be like. Okay, so what you have here, normally in the Last Judgment scene, you have Christ as ruler and judge. Okay, Christ as ruler and judge. And here Christ, you can see, he's much bigger than all the other figures. Okay, and he's shown frontally as well. Okay, okay, and he's shown as the ruler of both heaven and earth. Okay, and at the bottom register, right, you'll see a lot of figures. Now, the thing is that during the medieval period, okay, there's a split, right, between the purity of heaven and the sins of earth. Okay, in a sense, humans became less important during the medieval period. Okay, because human beings were seen, or the human nature was seen as one that, gives way to sin and lust. Right? Okay, so you see how artists, in fact, represented the human figure during medieval times, as in this particular work, right? As very miserable, frail, puny, insignificant. Okay, I don't know whether it can. It's not very clear here, but if you have a chance, okay, look closely at the figures, right? Okay, it's unlike the kind of figures that we come across, right, during the Renaissance. Okay, and so we are told in the book of Revelation that the dead will arise. Okay, during the end times. Okay, and here you can see that the dead being lined up, and you can see a hand here like an oversized plier, right, taking up each body to be weighed, okay, by the scales of judgment here. Okay, and you'll see angel here, right, weighing each of the so-called souls, right, on the scales of judgment. And here we'll see the devil, okay, the demon, in fact, the demon, okay, also trying to snatch away, right, okay, these souls. Okay, so all in all I actually have here you can see it better, right? So you see, I mean, the way that the angel is depicted, right, is quite different as well. Okay, it's rather elongated, it's quite elegant, okay, whereas the demon on the right, okay, is depicted like a flayed corpse, okay, quite horrible looking, right? So you can see, the Ghibli Bertus have a lot of imaginative power, right, in trying to, visualize, okay, what the last judgment will be like. Now this particular scene shows the baptism of Christ. It's done by, well, it says there Andrea del Verrocchio, right? But actually it's done by Andrea del Verrocchio and his workshop. Okay, and of course one of his most celebrated pupil, in fact, is, anyone's guess? Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, so Verrocchio was his master. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was apprenticed at an early age, I think when he was like maybe 13, 14 years old. Okay, and and we are told by Vasari, who was the biographer of Renaissance artists, okay, that Leonardo had a hand to play in this particular painting, right? And how do we distinguish, Leonardo's hand from the hand of his master and other sort of apprentices? Okay, it's quite clear. I mean, people have made a study of this, and they found that there are different styles here in this one picture. All right. Okay. For example, they are quite certain that the figure of Christ. Normally, the master will paint or draw the most important figures. Okay, so we can assume that the figure of Jesus and also John the Baptist, right, are painted by Verrocchio himself. Okay, but how about the two angels? You see two angels there. One, on the right and the other on the left. Can you see that the two angels are painted quite differently? I don't know whether you can see it, but upon closer scrutiny, you can see that they are done through two very different styles. Okay. Now, anyone wants to sort of guess which particular angel, okay, was drawn by Leonardo da Vinci? Or already have the one on the left? Yes, right. Okay, you must have your reasons for saying that. But you know, if you look at the angel on the left, right? Okay, people have commented, okay, on the kind of the softness and delicacy of the angel. Okay, and especially the way the hair is also painted. You know, hair is painted, you know, like individually, right? And you know, the kind of softness, delicacy of the figure, you know, is to be a hallmark, right, of Leonardo's figures as well, right? And another area that was assumed to have been painted by Leonardo is the landscape, the distant landscape, okay, because of its atmospheric quality, right? Okay, and it was again, you know, it was thought to have been painted by Leonardo, okay. And the hand that you see above, right, that's the hand of God releasing the dove, right? As I said, the dove represents the Holy Spirit, okay. So when you know, when people scrutinize the way the hand is painted or drawn, and the tree on the left, okay, they came to a conclusion that this was probably done by the other apprentices, okay, because of his naivety and, you know, and the kind of the inept, you know, sort of quality of the way that they are drawn. Okay. And it's easy to recognize John the Baptist, right? He's always dressed in a kind of animal skin and carries a cross staff. Okay, so you know, in paintings, you know, John the Baptist normally carries the cross staff, right? That you see there. Okay, we come to the Last Supper paintings. Just two examples, you know. I mean, there have been about more than 10 Last Supper paintings done during the Renaissance alone, right? Okay, these are the two that I've included here. Okay, the first one is by Domenico Ghirlandaio. Right? Now, Ghirlandaio was the, you know, if you don't know, the teacher of Michelangelo. Right? And that painting of the Last Supper, right, the one at the top, okay, was said to have influenced, perhaps, Leonardo da Vinci's famous Last Supper painting. Okay? Now, you can see, you know, the way the table is laid out and the use, the spatial sort of organization, right, of the painting, okay, would have been a bit similar, I suppose, to the Last Supper painting by Leonardo, right? But it's a bit more fanciful here, right? So you see here, you know, Jesus seated amongst his apostles, okay, and on the lunette in the background, okay, you can see that the artist has painted kind of a landscape scene with trees and birds, right? Okay, I mean the details here in this painting, right, is quite amazing, right? If you look at the details carefully, on the right you'll find a peacock on the windowsill, right? There's a cat somewhere as well. Okay, so you know, this Ghirlandaio was an artist who gave a lot of attention to detail. Okay, and he has also found a way as well to represent Judas. Okay, not normally in Last Supper painting. Okay. Anyone wants to guess where Judas is in this painting? Oops, sorry. The one on this painting, where is Judas? Anyone wants to? Right, he's the one seated separate from the other apostles. Okay? Here. Right? And it became the convention in the Renaissance to depict him this way, although not all the time. Okay, not all the time. Okay, so that, you know, it becomes very easy to identify Judas because, you know, he's thought to be evil and, you know, so he's separated from the rest of the apostles. Okay. Now, this particular Last Supper by Ghirlandaio is also striking for its kind of, you know, attempts, you know, at using gesture as a form of communication among the apostles. Okay, and that you can see quite clearly in the other famous Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Right? Then at the bottom is a very interesting one. Okay, here you see you see all the apostles are, you know, it's a very frank, I would say, depiction of, you know, what the apostles would have been. They are just, you know, ordinary fishermen, you know, tax collectors, you know, people from lower rungs of society. And that's how this particular artist, right, Jacopo Bassano, right, in fact depict them. okay, as a bunch of rather, I suppose, uncouth, sort of scruffy, persons or individuals, right? It seems to be a rather chaotic scene, right? You see, the apostles are, they are gesturing to one another. They seem to be, pointing, to another person, right? Now, this, I suppose the Last Supper is normally depicted at a point when actually Jesus, all right, made this statement that one of you will betray me. Okay, so I suppose in Bassono's Last Supper, you'll find, the apostles are, sort of wondering who is that person, right, who would betray Jesus. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, it looks quite chaotic, but it's actually a well-composed work. All right. In the middle, you'll see Jesus standing up. Okay. I don't think he even has a halo, right? Do you all see a halo? No, I don't see it. Okay, but yet we know that it's Jesus somehow. Okay, as I said, right? When we look at this image, right? Because it's in the center, and because he has another apostle that is close to him. Can you see this young boy who is appears to be sleeping? Right, at the bosom of Jesus. Okay, that anyone wants to guess who that is? Okay, and in Last Supper paintings, you'll normally find this particular figure, okay, who is always shown young, right, either sleeping or at the bosom of Jesus. He's Saint John, okay, Saint John the Evangelist, right? Okay, and but it's difficult to tell where Judas is. Okay, I'm not able to in fact tell, right? I mean, here, the artist, unless someone can tell me, right? Okay, I still can't find, right, where Judas is here, right? Because I think the artist makes no attempt to try to, separate him from the rest of the apostles. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, the composition is quite well composed. You see Jesus in the center, and then flanking him are 5 apostles, right? I mean, 5 or 6 apostles on each side. Each one like mirroring one another, right? So what appears to be a chaotic scene is actually quite well composed. Okay, and now again, there's a little debate about whether the Last Supper is actually the Passover. As you know, the Passover is a Jewish festival, right? Celebrating the freedom from the Jewish, the bondage of the Jews in Egypt, okay? Or whether it's the last meal that Jesus partook with his apostles, okay, where he celebrated the Eucharist with them, right? The breaking of the bread, okay, and the body. The breaking of the bread and the serving of wine, right, to represent his body and his blood, okay? And we come to, of course, the most famous Last Supper. Okay, now this particular Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, of course, right? This is actually after restoration, right? And this, I suppose, this particular Last Supper painting has been praised for the way that Leonardo used perspective to create a unified space, okay, and the way that he even grouped the figures, right, into 4 groups of 3. Okay, so what we see here overall is a kind of unity and symmetry, right, that he gives to the whole painting, right? Even the tapestries on the left and right, okay, the 4 tapestries and the 3 windows in the background, okay, all of this, sort of gives a certain unity and symmetry to the whole painting, right? And Christ is just at the center, okay, in the shape of a kind of a pyramid or a triangle, and both his hand is pointing to the bread, right, and the wine, representing his body and his blood. Okay, and Leonardo painted this at a point when Jesus made that statement, right? Okay, one of you will betray me. Okay, and with that you can see all the disciples are, they are sort of. I think one particular aspect of this work, one strong aspect is characterization. Okay, where all the characters seem to come alive. Okay, through their gestures, right? Through their poses. Okay. Now there are a couple of individuals I want to point out here, right? Now, where is Judas in this painting? Now, in a sense, I suppose Leonardo broke away with tradition or convention in representing Judas, right? You don't see Judas seated, separate or opposite the apostles, okay? But Leonardo had a clever way of, representing Judas is here. Okay, the one that is painted darker than the rest. Okay, now why darker, right? Is to signify his evilness. Okay, and you can see that he moves forward a little bit. So, in that sense, by moving him forward a little bit, he becomes separate from the rest of the apostles. Okay, and beside him is St. Peter. Okay, because St. Peter actually holds a knife. If you look closely, actually holds a knife. Okay, and this is an allusion to the time later when he was to use the knife to cut off the ear of the Roman soldier. Okay. And the one that I have the question mark. Who is that person? Who is that man? Who is that lady? Is that a lady? Well, according to Dan Brown, it's Mary Magdalene. Is that correct? Okay, unmistakable. It's a female figure. Do you all agree? Yes, I see some heads nodding. Yes. Right. Now, I mean, for Leonardo to paint Mary Magdalene here, I mean, that would have been one of the greatest, acts of blasphemy, right? Or sacrilege. Okay. Now, of course, that's not Mary Magdalene, but St. John again. Okay, as I mentioned, St. John is always the one who is closest to Jesus. And he's normally painted as a very effeminate sort of young man. Okay, because at that time it was customary for young men to be painted in a very soft, effeminate manner. Okay, and you can see it not only here but in other Last Supper paintings, and also in some of the paintings of Raphael. All right, later on we'll see one where he also depicts Saint John, okay, as that who looks like a woman. Right? Okay, so don't be deceived by writers like Dan Brown, right, who try to claim that this is Mary Magdalene, right, and that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. Okay. Now there's a bit of controversy as well. About this true likeness. About this question of what, what did Christ look like? Is actually quite interesting here because this is after restoration, and when it was restored, some people were fuming mad because they felt that this looked very different from before the restoration, where suddenly the beard of Christ disappeared, right? Okay, so again, it's interesting as to what actually people perceive Christ to be like, or his appearance. Okay, when we actually really don't know what he looks like. Okay. All right. Okay, and then we go to the crucifixion, right? I mean, there are numerous representations of the crucifixion, right? But I find this to be one of the most interesting ones. Okay. This is a work by Andrea Mantegna, right? And Andrea Mantegna was an artist, known for his very bold, innovative perspective, okay, and also his study of classical sculpture. All right, Mantegna will study, classical sculpture as well as, the fragments of classical architecture. And as a result, if you look at the figures in Mantegna's work, right, his figures always look like they are actually made of bronze or stone, okay, which means that they look very statuesque and sculptural. Okay, so here, it's quite a fanciful scene, I would say, right, of the crucifixion, right. You will find, of course, I mean, it does follow convention as well. You'll find Jesus right in the center. He's flanked by, of course, the two thieves. Okay, according to the Bible, right? There were two other people who were crucified on either side of Jesus, right? And you can see the perspective used by Mantegna here. Okay, the use of what you call linear perspective is used to suggest the distant city and the hills. and also the use of what you call a foreshortened perspective, okay, that is used to depict the crosses on the right and left of Jesus. Okay, so if you look at the crosses on the right and left, right, it appears to be rather three-dimensional, right? That's because of the use of what you call foreshortened perspective. Okay, and then at the bottom you have, of course, the usual entourage of Jesus, right? Okay, the female followers, and the Roman soldiers. Okay, but here you even have Roman soldiers, seated on horses. Now, this is one of the most, of course, famous work of art. I wouldn't say, even in Christian art, but I think in the entire, history of art, right, is the Pieta, right, by Michelangelo, PT. Okay, and images of PT normally shows either Mary with, with Jesus, or, together with Saint John. Okay, but here you'll find that, this work is really a masterpiece, right, in Western sculpture. Right. Firstly, the difficulty, of unifying two figures, which Michelangelo has succeeded. Okay, here he has unified the vertical, figure of Mary with the horizontal figure of Christ, right, as one. Okay, and other than that, we can certainly admire the virtuosity of Michelangelo's skill as a sculptor, right? The way he depicted the drapery, Mary's drapery, etc. Now, when so unsurprisingly, there were people who were claiming this work to be their own. Okay, so to put a kind of end to those rumors, okay, Michelangelo decided to carve his own name on the band across Mary's drapery. Okay, right? It's his only signed work, right? His only signed work. Now, some scholars who have seen this, are critics, right? They actually commented on certain anomalies. Okay, the first anomaly, of course, is Mary's youthfulness. She looked too young, right? Okay, right? Is there, did Michelangelo make a mistake of depicting her too young, right? Of course not, right? He wanted to portray an idealized version of Mary, right? He wanted to emphasize her virginity, her purity, her chastity. Okay, and also another anomaly is the size, right? If you look at Mary's size relative to Jesus, she's actually depicted bigger. Okay, but again, I think that's for compositional reasons. Okay, why Michelangelo did that. Okay. I believe this is now in St. Peter's, right, in Rome. Okay, now we move on to the Baroque, and in Baroque, what happened was that after the Reformation, right, the Catholic Church launched what they call a Counter-Reformation. Okay, and this council, called a very famous council called the Council of Trent. Okay, it was decided to use art, right? Art is to be used as a vehicle to increase the faith of the people. Okay, so what you have in 17th century, Europe, okay, especially in Catholic countries, right, are works, right, that serve to create scenes which will increase the faith of the faithful, like the works of Caravaggio. Okay, Caravaggio was an Italian artist. Okay, he was a bit of a rebel. I don't know if you are familiar with the life of Caravaggio. He has a very interesting life. Okay, in fact, he was always on the run from the law, right? In fact, I think he was also arrested and in prison. Okay, he had a rather violent temper. Okay, and he has been charged for assault. Okay, and even wanted over a murder they committed. Okay, allegedly over a tennis bet, right? A tennis wager. Okay, so you can see as a person, he was already quite a rebel. And even as an artist, he was, in a sense, a rebel, a revolutionary. Okay, in terms of his approach to painting. Okay, and Caravaggio was revolutionary in two ways. Okay, firstly, his use of light and dark. Okay, that's known by the Italian word called tenebroso, which means in English it's called tenebrism. Okay, shadowy, the use of light and dark. Okay, where some areas are dark, okay, and other areas are illuminated. That creates a very dramatic effect in his work. Okay, and I think that suited the Counter-Reformation church. Okay, what they wanted, are such mystical, such dramatic scenes, right, to increase the faith of the people, right? Okay, another sort of innovation, and which he was criticized for, is the realism of his work, right? Some people call his work too realistic, okay, and that's because he actually used ordinary figures, plebeian, ordinary figures, men in the street figures, to depict the saints, to depict the apostles, and even the figure of Jesus, right? Now, if you look at this man, who is holding Jesus, that's Nicodemus, right? Nicodemus was mentioned in the Bible as the one who actually entombed Jesus, right? And you can see how he depicts, Nicodemus is depicted as a very scruffy, sort of worn, worn out looking sort of a figure, okay, something like a beggar, right? And even the figure of Jesus, right, is depicted as just an ordinary, a man. Okay, there are no attempts here to try to, make them holy, right, with halos and all that. Okay, so Caravaggio was, in fact, criticized for this aspect of his work, right? And that's because, his friends were the men in the streets. Okay, he would pick up, someone from the park, right, and use him as a model, right, for his work. Okay, in this work called the Entombment of Christ, okay, you'll see Nicodemus, right, holding Jesus, and they are about to put Jesus on this stone slab here. Okay, you see the stone slab. Okay, and the woman that you see here, they are the usual followers, okay, that you see in such paintings. Mary, mother of Jesus, as well as Mary Magdalene, right? The prostitute who was later forgiven, okay, by Jesus. Okay, and this, in fact, this painting was originally placed in a church, just behind the altar, right? Okay, so visually, when you look at it, just behind the altar, and the altar is in front. Okay, it's as if, when Nicodemus is trying, when he's in the process of putting Jesus' body down on this stone slab, it's as if he's putting Jesus' body down on the altar itself. Okay, but today, it's no longer, it's in a particular museum, right? It's no longer there in the church itself. Okay, so you can see how setting is quite important as well, right? For certain paintings. Okay, now I just wanted to sort of mention this briefly before I go to the my last part, which is the modern and contemporary period. Okay, that I mentioned before that there's always this uneasiness, this discomfort about imagery, right? In within the context of Christianity, right? And and Judaism, as already mentioned, right, strictly forbade, right, the depiction of imagery, right, or human figures, right? And this is known by the term called iconoclasm or iconoclastic, right? Okay, and of course in Islam also, okay, strictly, in fact, ban the depiction of sacred images. Okay, and iconoclasm is derived from Greek for image breaking. And the first kind of iconoclastic act happened in the 8th century, okay, during the Byzantine period, right? And there were orders given to destroy such images. Okay, so one can only sort of guess how many of this religious imagery had been destroyed, okay, through such iconoclastic decrees. Okay, and also during the 16th century, right, in Reformation Europe, okay, many of these images were likewise destroyed. Walls were whitewashed. I'm just going to show you two images, right? And in Western Europe, in particular in Switzerland and Germany, okay, many of these images, right, in fact, were destroyed. Okay, and there was a ban, that has been put towards the making of new images or religious images. Okay, so on the left, you see, some relief sculptures, all right, with their, that have been defaced, right, as you can see. And on the right, you see a painting showing, the whitewashing of, images on the wall of a church. Okay. Right. So again, there's always this unease or discomfort, okay, about the use of images. Okay, but okay, so in Western Europe itself, in the Netherlands, okay, as I said, in the Netherlands, there were very few artists who actually, did religious imagery, and one of the few artists is Rembrandt, okay, and somehow Rembrandt got away with it, because the other artists were just making still life, okay, landscape paintings, okay, but religious imagery in fact formed quite a big part of Rembrandt's oeuvre, his body of works, okay, and this particular one is actually a print, okay, done through dry point and burin, okay, and it shows, and it has the hallmark of a Rembrandt, right? The theatrical light and dark called chiaroscuro, right? It's quite evident here in this work, okay, and it's also a very well composed work, right? Christ is right at the center. He's actually preaching, right? He's standing on a kind of a platform, as you can see. And if you look at all the figures, right, okay, they are giving him the fullest attention, right, except for the child on the, okay, in the center foreground, okay, and the rest are just, giving him their rapt attention, okay, and we also see the use of light here, right, in a kind of metaphorical way as well, okay, where light is sort of diffused, right, okay, across this work, right? Okay, but as I said, Rembrandt, I mean, if you look at his figures of saints and Jesus, right, he actually depicts them as human beings. Okay, so some people have commented on the kind of the human quality of, Rembrandt's holy figures. Okay, they look human, and and many of his works stress the human ministry of Jesus, right? And I think that's one way of getting around this prohibition, right, against the depiction of images. So you don't see, for example, figures with halo, or figures that are shown in a very mystical way, right, in Rembrandt's work. So I just want to show, I think, okay, I have to just speed up a little bit. Okay. Okay, the next painting I'm going to show is this very famous work, okay, by William Holman Hunt, right, who was part of the pre-Raphaelite, okay, Brotherhood. Okay. Now this painting is called Light of the World, right? Of course, it's a reference to the Bible, right? To two passages in the Bible, right? In John chapter 8, verse 12, it says, right, Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world." Okay, and in Revelation, right, he says, "I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice, opens the door, I will come in and will eat with him and he with me." Right? Okay, so you have here a very human-looking Jesus holding a lamp. Okay, so that lamp becomes metaphorical then for Jesus as light of the world. Okay, and here Jesus is standing in front of the door, but you can see that the door has now been surrounded by unkempt weeds, thorns. Okay, you can see that the door has long since been unopened. Okay, now who's standing behind the door? Okay, and it's said to be ourselves, our mind. Is it our own mind, our hearts? Right? Okay, so, and if you look at the door closely, it has no handles. Okay, there are no handle. There's no handle. Right? So it can only be opened from the inside. Okay, right? So again, this work is quite powerful in that sense, right? It's a powerful imagery, okay, of Christ as a savior here, okay, who is willing to save anyone, right? Who is willing to open their hearts or their minds to Him, right? Okay, and now this work was a very popular one, right? In fact, he made a tour of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, where about 7 million people saw this work. Okay. There are other sort of secondary symbols here. You see a bat. Okay. On top, actually, there's a bat. Okay, and the bat, in fact, stands for evil and darkness, right? And there are some weeds here, right? The brambles here. Okay, and of course, the bramble symbolizes vice and sloth. Right? And the lamp that Jesus carries, right, symbolizes light, okay, to signify him as light of the world. And he wears two crowns, right? If you look at, you can see it, he wears both the crown of glory and the earthly crown, right? So he actually wears two crowns in this work. Is it too bright? Okay, maybe when you go back, you have a closer look. And Paul Gauguin, and again, you can see the artists. This was during the late 19th century. You can see already artists beginning to depict, the crucifixion and religious imagery according to their own artistic vision, right? And Paul Gauguin was, of course, is famous for his scenes of Tahiti. Okay, he decided one day to leave Western civilization and went in search of the primitive. Okay. And in fact, one of the first places he went to before he went to Tahiti is this place called Brittany. Okay, Brittany is in the backwaters of France. Okay, and he thought that he could find the primitive there. Okay, and as he said, he wanted to restore art to its primal sources. Okay, so here he depicts a yellow Christ. Okay, where did he get the idea from? Right, some say that he got the idea from this particular wooden statue of Christ that's painted yellow, right, in a nearby church. All right, but you can see that all in all, it's a very personal vision of what the crucifixion is. Okay, it's done with a very flattened planes, intense colors, okay, and very bold outlines. Okay, and interestingly, you can see how Gauguin has departed from the traditional way of representing crucifixion. Okay, not only because Christ is painted yellow, okay, but the people at the bottom. Okay, here in place of Saint John and the Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, you have the Breton woman, the woman who lived in Brittany. Okay, taking their place, right? And many of these women, used to pray in front of large stone crosses. Okay, so in a sense, right, this is actually like a vision. It's like as if this Breton woman, they're having a vision of the crucifixion, right, while they are praying. Okay. All right. Now this is the last part. Now if modern art. We're talking about 20th century. Modern art is dominated by abstract art, right? Okay, and abstract art also tries to use the language of religion, the language of spirituality. Okay, if you look at the works of Piet Mondrian, Kandinsky, and artists like that, okay, you can see how, and even Mark Rothko, the American abstract expressionist artist, right, how they try to use the rhetoric of religion, the language of religion, right, okay, for their own works. Okay. So some will assume that religion or religious art have declined, or rather art and religion have become antagonists, natural antagonists. Okay. Now to a certain extent that's true. Okay, we cannot deny that since the 17th century, since the time of the Enlightenment, okay, religious art has declined. Okay, and in particular during the 20th century, okay, when artists in fact try to look towards their inner self, okay, for their own sort of artistic vision. Okay, but were these works done to express the artist's enmity? Okay, so this is a big question, right? Okay, so do artists deliberately, make art in a sense to critique religion? Okay, I must say that yes, to a certain extent, some artists do. Okay. Right, so some artists do engage religious themes to critique organized religion, right? But there are other artists also who draw on religious imagery for their own devotion, okay, right, for their own more private expressive ends. Right? Okay, so we'll for the last part, we're going to look at about 7 to 8 of such artists, beginning with Picasso. Okay. Now, I don't think many of you have seen this work. Are you aware of this work called The Crucifixion? Okay, I think not many of you. Okay, this is one of his, in fact, lesser known works, but a work that is, in fact, quite similar to one of his most famous works that was to be painted about 7 years later, called Guernica. Okay, I think you've seen Guernica, right? There was a kind of a protest against the Spanish Civil War. Okay, now this painting was done during what he call his Surrealist phase. Okay, so you can see that nothing is quite definite or certain here. Okay, in fact, when we look at how the shapes and some of the figures, or what looks like figures, okay, we don't really recognize them. Okay, they are done really in a kind of a surrealist manner, I would say. Okay, but again, so this work has been called anti-modern. It has been called largely inscrutable because nobody quite know what's going on here, right? But some people say that, well, Picasso is trying also to interpret the pain and suffering, right, of that Christ experienced in the crucifixion. Okay, so where's the crucifix here, or the crucifixion, right? Here. But interestingly, Picasso sort of depicts not the crucifixion itself, okay, not at the time when Christ has died, okay, but in fact when he was being nailed to the cross. Okay, so you see this figure here, right? He's trying to nail, right, Jesus onto the cross, and he's stepping on a ladder, right? And then where are the two thieves? Okay, the two thieves, they are on either side of Jesus, right? And it's represented by the T crosses here, one here, one here. Okay, but you don't see the bodies of the two thieves because they are here on the ground. Okay, the two figures. Okay, and this horseman with a lance, okay, I'm not sure, right? It probably represents a Roman soldier, right? That were present, or at least these two figures here. Okay, casting die or dice. Okay, and they cast dice to determine who will get the cloak of Jesus, right? Okay, now other than that, it's yes, I mean I will agree is that it's quite a inscrutable, right, painting. Okay, nobody really knows for certain, right? Okay, what's happening here? Okay, okay, so it's a very personal, modern vision of the crucifixion. Oh, and this large form here, it seems to have been an oversized sponge, where it's soaked in vinegar later and given to Jesus, right? So it's thought to be that sponge there that you see on the upper left. Okay, likewise mysterious, right? Similarly sort of mysterious and inscrutable, I would think, is this particular work by Salvador Dali, right? Done in typical Dali style, right? Okay, I would say quite, rather surrealist as well, that, I mean, this work is really beyond reality. Okay, I mean, on the surface, it seems to depict the Last Supper. Okay, but is it actually the Last Supper? Okay, we are not quite certain here. I mean, that person you see seated in the center, okay, that is holding his right hand, okay, and pointing it right at this transparent torso above, okay, seem to be Jesus himself, right? But it's a rather very modern looking Jesus, right? Okay, he wears, I mean, he's kind of his body is half exposed. Okay, he looks he has rather long hair and clean shaven. Okay, and if you count the number of figures that are surrounding him, there are 12 altogether. But are they the apostles? Because we cannot see their faces. Okay, right? In fact, all of them seem to wear priestly vestments. Okay, and all of them seem to be like in an attitude of prayer. Right? Okay. So I mean, this and this transparent torso there, okay? I mean, the hands are outstretched, you know, spanning the width of the picture plane. Okay, who's that figure there? Right? Now, some say that, you know, it's God himself. Right? It's God himself, but we are not very sure. Okay? And the space itself is quite equally as mysterious. Right? You can see that Dali used what you call dodecahedron, meaning a 12-sided space. Right? You know, and so it takes place within this space. And there's a kind of mystical light, okay, that's aligned with the, you know, the figure of Christ here. Okay. But all in all, you know, I mean, this painting has been criticized as in vulgar, right? Vulgar because, again, because of the figure of Christ and the kind of the naked torso, right, you see on top. Okay. But I think it's also a very powerful vision, right, by Dali, because at this time, in fact, Dali became quite religious. Okay, right, and he became very much interested in the Roman Catholic faith. Okay, and he also became very interested in science and optical illusion during this time. So I think we have to understand this painting in that context, right? And you can see the figure of Christ, it looks rather intangible. Okay, in comparison with the rather solid mass of, you know, the other figures. Okay, so you can see how Dali was interested as well, or influenced by things like nuclear physics, okay, that talks about energy and mass and all that. Right? So it's typical of Dali's work, I would say, you know, it's a very surrealist piece of interpretation of the Last Supper. Right? Now, this work is a work by perhaps you know, the best figure painter, right, in the post-war period. Right, together with Lucian Freud, right, and that is Francis Bacon, right? Okay, and now Francis Bacon, you know, is known for his very distorted images, you know, screaming figures, right, screaming popes, okay, and this particular one is actually a triptych, right, a triptych called Three Studies for Crucifixion. Okay, but where's the crucifixion here? Right, do you see the crucifixion? You only see the base of the crucifixion. Right? So on the right, you see the base of the crucifixion, right, the bottom part of the crucifixion, and a kind of a splayed, you know, sort of a carcass-like figure slithering down, right, the base of the crucifixion. Okay, and in the middle sort of a panel, you'll see a kind of mangled body, okay, that resembles, you know, an animal carcass. Okay, and on the left you'll see two figures, and on the table there seems to be like a slab of meat. Okay, so if you know, I mean, there's the quote on top, right, and where Francis Bacon says we are meat, we are potential carcasses, and the quote here, okay, simply tells you that Francis Bacon was trying to make an analogy between the crucifixion and also the brutality of the slaughterhouses. You know, the slaughterhouses where animals are actually slaughtered, right? And he wanted to link that with the crucifixion. Now, he's certainly not a religious person, right? But he saw the crucifixion as a kind of, you know, a metaphor, okay, for the human condition, for man's inhumanity to man, okay, because he was also very much affected by the Second World War, by the brutality of the Second World War. Okay, so I suppose, you know, such distorted, such sort of brutal figures, okay, you know, were a result of kind of Bacon's, right, own philosophy about how he saw the world, right, okay, or how he saw his fellow human beings. Okay, so this is a very interesting interpretation of the crucifixion. Okay, and then this is a very controversial work. Okay, Peace Christ, by Andrea Serrano. Okay, now if not for the title, I think you agree that this is quite a beautiful work. Okay, now again, because of the light, I think, you know, it's affecting the image. You know. But, you know, for the title, I mean, the title is definitely offensive. Okay, Peace Christ. Okay, now what you see here is actually a photograph. Okay, and this photograph was made by using a plastic crucifix, okay, submerged in a yellow liquid. And that yellow liquid is actually the artist's own urine. Okay, and oh, thank you. And you know, and of course, when this work first came out, you know, I mean, there was, criticism from all quarters. Okay, I mean, I remember the U.S. senator, in fact, tore right a print of this work right during one of the Senate sessions, right, and called for a kind of a ban on artists doing such works, right? Okay, but other sort of people, in fact, even academics have defended this work, okay, and call it deeply mysterious and beautiful, okay, especially for the very deep, rosy, saturated colors, right, and the constellation of bubbles there, right, okay, that gives this work its formal beauty, right, okay, but other than that, okay, so but others cannot see, only its formal beauty, right, but the title itself. And in fact, this book has been attacked, right, in the few places that it was shown. Okay, I believe it was attacked in France with hammers, and then when it went to Australia, it was also attacked, right, okay, by protesters. But we have to hear the artist's intention, right? And Andrea Serrano himself claimed to be a Christian, right? And he wanted this work to be a kind of a statement, right, against the cheapening and the commercialization of religious icons in contemporary society, right, especially the crucifix. Okay, well, and that's a quote by him. He said, if peace Christ upsets you, maybe it's a good thing to think about what happened on the cross. Right? Okay, and in fact, if you think about it, yes, I mean, look at a singer, singers like Madonna, who have really, used the cross in a very blasphemous way, right? So maybe he wants to draw attention to that. Okay, but using in fact materials that are considered to be non-conventional, okay, like his own urine, okay. Okay, a few more to go. I hope you can bear with me, right? Okay, this is a Philippine artist called Ang Kiew Kok, right? Okay, Ang Kiew Kok really practiced in the 60s as well, I think in the 70s, and it's his vision. Okay, his artistic vision of the crucifixion, right? Okay, but his vision of crucifixion is not one of the victorious Christ, right? But one of the suffering Christ. Okay, now when Jesus died, it's actually to be a victory over sin. Okay, but Ang Kiew Kok is here trying to question whether Jesus has died in vain. Okay, because mankind is still the same. We are plagued by evil and and inhumanity and killing, etc. Right? So here, what the artist has done is that if you look at the head, okay, the head itself is consumed by the crown of thorns. Okay, the body itself is disintegrated into a kind of a bloodied, throbbing mess. Right? So here, the artist is trying to use the crucifixion as a metaphor for the human condition, right? Which he looked upon in a very pessimistic way. Okay, so instead of standing, symbolizing victory here, okay, or salvation, in fact, right, the crucifixion, in at least in this work, right, stands for pain, suffering, and agony. Now, while the peace Christ will shock you, okay, I think you'll be, probably more shocked by this particular work, okay, by an artist called African American artist. She was, I think, born in Jamaica, called Renee Cox. Okay, and the title of this work is called Yo Mama's Last Supper. Okay, now we have to understand first Renee Cox's practice. Okay, and Renee Cox often used a body, either nude or clothed, to celebrate, black womanhood. Okay, and also to make a critique against sexism and racism. Okay, so if you know a practice, perhaps you'll see this work in that context. Okay, now, of course, some people have slammed this work as being pornographic, right? because of the figure there. That's the artist herself, okay, taking the place of Jesus, right? But I think if you look at the figure carefully, it's not a very sexually arousing figure, right? Okay, so you see the figure of the figure here, you know. But another thing you'll notice, I mean, if you look at this Last Supper work by Rene Cox, it's actually a critique against sexism and racism, right? Okay, firstly, you know, if you look at all the figures, they're all black, except one white figure. And guess who that figure is? Judas Iscariot. Okay, that's Judas, right? And perhaps here she's using Judas to talk about, you know, I won't generalize it as being a kind of a critique against whites in general, but perhaps a kind of betrayal of black women by white men, or the betrayal of black people by white men. Okay, so he also speaks against racism here, right? Okay, and the fact that, you know, Rene Cox substituted herself for the figure of Christ, okay, also perhaps a statement against, you know, racism, against how black people have been treated. If you look at all the kind of images of Christ and the saints, okay, they are invariably white, correct? White Europeans, okay? And, you know, and perhaps in this work she's trying to question, you know, I mean, Jesus has always been portrayed as white, okay? And the figure of Jesus embodies, you know, holiness, purity, kindness, okay? And where does that leave black people, okay? So black people have very little opportunity to be associated with positive traits, right? So for once, perhaps she wanted to convey, you know, or wanted to portray, right, colored people in a very positive, powerful manner, okay? And I think, you know, to a certain extent, she has done it here. Again, you know, I mean, we can easily dismiss such works as blasphemous, right? In fact, I've seen even more blasphemous works of the Last Supper. Okay, I can't remember the artist's name, but there's one showing all the figures, you know, cross-dressing as, you know, transvestites. Okay, I can't remember the, you know, that's, okay, so that one, you know, it's a bit difficult for me to accept, right? Okay, but this one, if you, as I said, if you understand her practice, perhaps, you know, you can, you know, understand what she's trying to convey here. Have you seen this, right? It's called the Che, not Guevara, but the Che Jesus, right? Okay, you all know who Che Guevara is, and Che Guevara was this Argentinian-born revolutionary, right? Who had fought wars, you know, alongside Castro in Cuba, in Bolivia, and I think he was later killed. I think by the Americans, if I'm not mistaken. No, he was killed by the Bolivians themselves, right? Okay, the army, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, but anyway, Guevara's image has been immortalized, right, in this print or poster by Jim Fitzpatrick, who actually based his work on a photograph by Alberto Corder. Okay, Alberto Corder was, you know, a Cuban photographer, right, and, you know, Fitzpatrick's poster, okay, was based on the original photograph by Corder. Okay, and he has become really an icon, you know, right, a kind of, you know, icon for popular culture, I would say, right? And to a certain extent in art. Okay, and, you know, this Che Jesus was, of course, derived or based on that image of Che Guevara. Okay, and it's created, in fact, in 1999, okay, for the Churches Advertising Network, for the Easter in 1999, when, you know, they wanted to attract more people, right, to you know, to go to church. Right, this was in Britain itself. Okay, so they created this poster, and this poster was created by superimposing the image of Christ with the original photograph of Che Guevara, okay, to create this image. And it has a logo, it says a caption, "Meek Mao, as if," right, discover the real Jesus. Okay, because the creators of this image, you know, felt that the New Testament was not, they didn't want to create an image of Jesus that is like, you know, a Sunday school image of Jesus, right? Okay, but they believe that, you know, the New Testament, okay, was quite violent. It was, you know, it's angry, it's revolutionary. Okay, so they wanted to create a kind of a revolutionary image of Jesus in that sense. Okay, and also you come to think of it, one other commentator says that, you know, Jesus in fact was more revolutionary than any other revolutionaries in the 20th century, right? Okay, in fact he was, if you look at his life, right? And that was why he was rejected, right, by the Jewish people. Okay, this work by Mark Wallinger. Now, Mark Wallinger is a very interesting artist. I think if you have a chance, you know, okay, you can study his works, you know, or research his work even, you know, more closely. And this was a very controversial work as well. It's called Ecce Homo. Okay, translates as "Behold the man." Okay, I mean that is the word of Pontius Pilate where he said, "Behold the man." You know, he's handing over Jesus back to the Jewish people, right? After I believe Jesus was, you know, flogged and whipped. Okay, and so there's this. Actually, it's Trafalgar Square. Okay, and the fourth plane of Trafalgar Square was empty, and Mark Wallinger was one of the artists who was commissioned to make a work, okay, for the empty plane. Okay, but why did he decide to make a religious figure of all figures, you know, right? An image of Christ. Okay, rather than, I don't know, you know, some more popular figures, I suppose. Okay, and you know, Trafalgar Square is filled with, you know, statues of, you know, some of the luminaries of British history, right? The rulers and, you know, people like that. Okay, but Wallinger says that, you know, this was done in 1999. It was just very close to the millennium. Okay, and Wallinger was thinking, you know, even, you know, everybody was talking about the millennium bug. Remember the millennium bug, right? All the computers were somehow, I don't know, you know, right? But nobody seemed to talk about Christ, about Jesus, right? Because this was exactly about 2,000 years after his death. Okay, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Wallinger himself is an agnostic, right? Okay, he has declared himself to be agnostic. Okay, but I think, you know, and again, why did he place this figure here in Trafalgar Square? Okay, again, you know, I suppose the artist wanted to look at how, okay, contemporary society today, right, especially in Britain, is connected, right, with religion itself. Okay, perhaps that's one reason. Okay, and here, when it's controversial also because this image doesn't resemble Christ himself. It's as if, again, we know what Jesus looks like. Okay, I mean, he doesn't have a beard, no long hair, you know, right? It depicts this very clean-shaven man, right? Because Wallinger wanted to show his humanity, as he says, an ordinary human being. Okay, and in fact, this figure was based on a cast of an actual person. Okay, I'm not sure who the actual person is, but it's an actual person, right? Okay, who you know, who provided the kind of model for this image. So you see here Christ, you know, wearing a crown, right? The crown itself is made of gilded barbed wires, okay, and he wears a loincloth, right? Okay, and some people have commented that he doesn't look like he's suffering, you know, right? Okay, he looks very calm and relaxed, okay, rather than suffering Christ. Okay, that's another criticism of it. Oh, that's my last one, sorry. I thought I had another one. Okay, thank you very much.